Hi, my name is Sophia, and today we're going to be talking about topic 1.2 of the AS International History textbook. What was the impact of imperial expansion on international relations? Let's start with the one key term, which is scorched earth. And scorched earth is a tactic where armies deliberately destroy crops, land, and property to deny the enemy food, shelter, and resources, usually by burning it. And now let's talk about the impact of growth of overseas empires. In the late 19th century, imperial expansion intensified rivalry between major powers. European nations competed for raw materials, markets, trade routes, and territory. Governments adopted more aggressive foreign policies to defend national pride and extend influence. As a result, international relations became more tense, unstable, and conflict-prone, though some disputes were still resolved diplomatically, such as the Fashoda incident, which was a crisis that took place in Sudan where British and French imperial ambitions collided. A French expedition led by Jean-Baptiste Marchand moved east across Africa, while British forces under Herbert Kitchener moved south after securing control of Egypt. They met at Fashoda. Both sides were prepared for conflict and war seemed plausible. But resolution came through diplomacy. French troops withdrew and accepted British control over Egypt and Sudan. In return, Britain acknowledged French influence in Morocco. It was significant as it demonstrated how imperial rivalry brought Europe close to war. It showed that negotiation could still prevent conflict, and it set a precedent for future diplomatic agreements. Next, on to Germany's demand for a place in the sun. Under Kaiser Wilhelm II, Kaiser being his title like a president, Germany adopted Feldpolitik, aiming to become a global imperial power. Germany's late entry into imperialism created tension, especially with Britain and France, who already controlled large empires. Now let's talk about the naval arms race. Germany began expanding its navy in the early 1900s, particularly after 1906. Britain, which depended on naval supremacy for security and trade, saw this as a direct threat. The possibility of a powerful German fleet in the North Sea increased hostility and competition between the two nations. Kaiser Wilhelm II justified the expansion as a necessity for protecting German trade interests. Next, the Entente Cordiale of 1904. This agreement, which was a series of agreements between Britain and France that marked a significant end to centuries of colonial rivalry and established a friendly, non-military, quote, understanding between them. It marked a major improvement in relations between Britain and France. It resolved colonial disputes and resulted in Britain accepting French control in Morocco and France accepting British control in Egypt. And it was significant as it reduced long-standing tensions between Britain and France. It isolated Germany diplomatically as it now felt threatened and sought to disrupt the alliance between Britain and France. And it increased polarization between alliances in Europe. And this directly led to the Moroccan crisis. First was the Tangier crisis. Kaiser Wilhelm II visited Tangier and publicly supported Moroccan independence. His goal was to challenge French influence and test the strength of the Entente Cordiale. And some of the outcomes were that the attempt to establish Moroccan independence failed, Britain still supported France, and Anglo-French relations became even stronger. Second was the Algeciras Conference, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, of 1906. European powers met to resolve the dispute, and most nations supported France, allowing it to maintain control over Moroccan policy, which led to Germany being diplomatically isolated once again, and to tensions increasing between Germany and other powers. Third was the Agadir crisis. Germany sent a gunboat, which was called Panther, to Agadir to challenge French expansion in Morocco, and that resulted in Britain strongly opposing Germany, and Germany withdrawing under pressure in exchange for minor territory in Africa. And it was significant as it increased distrust between Germany and Britain, and it reinforced alliances against Germany. Now let's talk about the disputes with China over imperial expansion. Following the First Opium War and the Second Opium War, China was forced to accept unequal treaties. The Treaty of Tianjin legalized the opium trade and opened ports to foreign powers. European countries established spheres of influence, increasing the competition. They basically partitioned China to take control over it. Internal instability in China followed. First, the Taiping Rebellion from 1850 to 1864 weakened China significantly. It was a massive, bloody civil war in China between the ruling Qing dynasty and a religious, peasant-led rebellion known as the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. The movement aimed to overthrow the Qing and eliminate the traditional Chinese religions and create a communal society with shared property, kind of like communism. And foreign powers intervened to protect their economic interests in China. Next was the Boxer Rebellion, which was a nationalist movement aiming at removing foreign influence from China. It was supported by the Chinese government, and it resulted in it being crushed by an 8-nation alliance, which were Japan, Russia, Britain, France, the United States, Germany, Italy, and Austria-Hungary. And China had to pay large reparations to those 8 countries, and rebellion resulted in backlashing, and foreign control even increased even more. And it was significant as it intensified rivalry between imperial powers in China, and it showed how imperialism could destabilize entire regions. Next, on to tensions in South Africa. Britain took control of Cape Colony in 1814, which is the southmost part of Africa, creating conflict with the Boer settlers who were of Dutch origin. The abolition of slavery in 1834 increased Boer resentment, as they were used as slaves in the Cape Colony, which led to the Great Trek and the creation of the Transvaal and Orange Free State, which you can see on the picture is orange. And First Boer War from 1880 to 1881 resulted in limited Boer independence. The Second Boer War from 1899 to 1902 began with gold after gold was discovered in Boer territories and Britain attempting to expand its control once again. And during the Second Boer War, Germany supported the Boers, including through the Kruger Telegram, which worsened its relationship with Britain even more. Some of the outcomes included that the Britain won, and they used scorched earth tactics and concentration camps in the Cape Colony. It was significant as it increased criticism of British imperialism, and it heightened tensions between Britain and Germany. Now on to the attempts to manage imperial rivalry. The Berlin Conference, organized by Otto von Bismarck, who was a German ruler, aimed to regulate the division of Africa. Some of the key outcomes included free navigation of the Congo and Niger rivers, requirement of, quote, effective occupation to claim territory, basically who came there first, that was the country that claimed the territory, agreements to resolve disputes diplomatically, and humanitarian justification through ending slavery. And it was significant as it prevented immediate conflict between European powers, it accelerated the scramble for Africa, and it ignored African political and ethnic boundaries. Finally, onto the East Asia. The Treaty of Shimonoseki followed Japan's victory in the First Sino-Japanese War, which we can see in the picture on the right. As a result of the First Sino-Japanese War, Japan gained Korea, Taiwan, and Port Arthur. However, The triple intervention by Russia, France, and Germany forced Japan to return Port Arthur, and that was significant as it showed how imperial powers interfered to protect their interests. It increased resentment in Japan, and it added to global tensions between major powers. And overall, imperial expansions increased competition, strengthened some of the alliances, and created repeated international crises. While some disputes were resolved through diplomacy, tensions continued to rise, contributing to instability in global relations. Here's the timeline, and that's it.